Dr. Barbara Boyd. I am a professor at the University of Oklahoma.
My name is Rick Kelleher.
I'm Curtis, and I am a graduate student. I'm a PhD student in the Department of Anthropology.
My name is Delia Atmaja. I am a new Muslim, a graduate student at the University of Texas at Austin.
These people lived in the vast territory of the United States that is home to 280 million, unaware of one another's presence, until a few young Turkish men, whom they knew to be respectable and courteous, invited them to Turkey. They had full confidence in the people who invited them to Turkey. But still, they experienced a slight apprehension while making their decision to go, because they had not always heard good things about Turkey so far.
My image, let me back up to one of the earliest images I ever had of Turkish people. And that image was shown in a movie called Midnight Express. And it was about a Turkish prison. I expected Istanbul to be a rather primitive place, maybe like some of the cities in Africa I visited. I expected the Islamic people to be hostile towards me as an American.
Are you kidding? Turkey? And he very gently, and he's so gracious and calmly said, yes, we'd like for you to come to Turkey. And I just said, you mean to Turkey in the Middle East? And he said, yes. And so then I began to ask a million questions.
When you say Turks, it meant they were fierce, they were capable of whipping you at the drop of a hat if they were in battle, and all of the films we saw where Turks were kind of treated in films like Native Americans were treated in American films. And that's the kind of image you have, and you don't even know you have it.
And I considered so many things about the trip. Friends told me not to go. Friends said, no, you don't want to go to Turkey now. It's dangerous. One said, if you go, you might be beheaded.
I agonized over the decision to go. I really wasn't sure whether I should go. But after about 3 weeks of thought, something beckoned me, and I felt almost a mystical pull. So we went.
All warnings, biases, apprehensions were cast aside, and they decided to go to Turkey. They were expecting to see a Middle Eastern country with its historical sites, mosques, and world-famous Bosphorus. But none of them could guess that the new hopes for the world were flourishing in the heart of this rapidly developing country. Nice surprises awaited these American guests in Turkey.
For example, they would compete amongst themselves to, when we're having dinner or something, they would race to be the first one to jump up to serve the other people, to bring food or to get drinks or something, and they would and some of them would be happy just to be serving throughout the whole meal and never sit down and eat with us.
When we got to Turkey, we were received with such generosity and such kindness everywhere we went that I was overwhelmed. And the kindness and the generosity was equaled only by the beauty that I saw everywhere.
I've never come across such generosity as I found on my trip, on my 10 days that I spent in Turkey.
God created this place as beautiful as possible and then said, oh my, I've made this so beautiful, everyone else will be jealous. So I'm going to have to create the Turkish people to be incredibly hospitable and generous so they'll share it with everyone.
We got to Turkey and started traveling around and seeing the reception we got, the amazing numbers of young men who came and helped us and carried our bags and drove us around, and everyone who gave us places to stay, and food, who took very attentive to us all the time. The effect that had on us as a group was that we started talking to each other. We all came to love each other so much, and it was purely in reaction to the environment of people in Turkey who allowed us to drop all of those facades and all of those other identities that we wear, so that we could be human again. And that was truly, truly huge. That was a huge gift to us.
They were fascinated by the warm welcome Turkish people embraced them with, but this seemed to be their lifestyle rather than a temporary care for a few guests coming from a distant land. And they began to question the source of this grace.
We were welcomed with open arms. We were certainly blessed, but we also heard strongly from our hosts that they were blessed as well as I'm sure in the Quran that relate to the gift of the stranger, the gift of the other.
Later to find out that this is the teachings of the Prophet, and another step of my learning to deeper. Learning deeper of Islam and seeing that my Turkish friends were already doing it and living it and living it very naturally.
Fine representation and sincerity introduced them to Islam. Islam was deeply rooted in the heart of Anatolia. Its beauty shone on the land. Although the streets were filled with the noise of the traffic, the divine call raising from the minarets 5 times a day could carry away those who had not lost their sense of hearing.
Allahu Ekber, Allah.
I remember we were in Istanbul, and we were right under a minaret when I heard it for the first time, and this soulful call that seemed to just pierce everything, and something coming from really deep within, and it hit me very deep within. I mean, there was certainly a mystical quality about it, but the sound of the call itself is just so soulful that it just kind of transfixed me, I guess is the best way to say it. I stopped in my shoes. I mean, it was just it was just shocking in some ways, because these aren't sounds you normally hear on the streets in America. And yet it was so unifying. I mean, it felt like, okay, here was a call to the people in the community to come together. This was the time to come together.
The azan, which resonates 5 times a day in this land, carried completely different meanings for a foreigner who had never heard this divine call. Sometimes a beautifully called azan from the minaret of a modest mosque sufficed to open the doors of many hearts.
And that call to God that went on 5 times a day let us keep God right there. You know, we can't worship God, or however you define God. You can't worship, remember, pray, praise, be grateful, you know, once a week. This is a reminder to be within us every moment of the day, to the degree that we can keep that in front of us. And that's what the calling did for me.
I guess as an American thought, mosques are these real big places like the Hagia Sophia, and we saw that, you know, and we saw these big the blue mosque and these big mosques. This mosque was this little thing, you know, that would fit maybe 20 people, and it was very, very humble in there, very humble, and this was a very poor part of the country, and I was moved by that. I was moved by even in this small, out of the way place in a poor part of the country, there's this place of worship that, in the eyes of the worshipers, has every bit of as much as importance as the Hagia Sophia, you know, and I was impressed by that, moved by that.
I went to the first mosque that I had ever entered when we went to Izmir, and to watch the men praying, I was upstairs because I'm a woman. When I first saw the men praying, it brought tears to my eyes. I was not prepared to see what I saw.
I lived in Germany for 4 years. I've been all over Europe. I've seen the most beautiful cathedrals in the world. I've looked at the rose window of Notre Dame, of the Sainte-Chapelle in Paris, the Cathedral of Chartres, the Dome of Bamberg. I've never seen such beauty. I've never seen such architecture as the Blue Mosque. When I went in the Blue Mosque and took off my shoes, what could I do but pray?
The trip had a very rigid and heavy schedule, and it was confined to 10 days. They were going to try to visit all significant places in Anatolia that are considered holy by Abrahamic religions. And they did. One of the guests joked that Turks knew how to eat, but they didn't know how to sleep. The group set off at dawn every day, but nobody complained, because there was so much to see in this land. And not only things of the past, but also of today, and even tomorrow. The American guests, who traveled around Anatolia inch by inch, from Urfa to Konya, from Izmir to Istanbul, frequently stopped by to see the schools which diligently worked to serve the people. Almost every child they saw approached them, trying to speak to them with their limited English. The brilliance that shone in the eyes of these kids deeply impressed the guests.
I went to these schools in Turkey, and they were the dream schools that I had fantasized about starting myself. We would go into the schools, and the kids were happy, they were friendly, they were polite, and they were eager to engage, to talk. I couldn't spend enough time with them. I wanted to talk to all of the kids. They seemed so thrilled to see us. At the elementary schools, I mean, these kids were so joyful. they were giggling and having, sometimes racing through the hallways. They're obviously very happy children. And when you can keep education and a child's enthusiasm and happiness and joy, when that can blend, boy, that's a real ideal.
But we had a great conversation, as much as we could understand. I saw in their face joy. I saw in their face happiness. I saw a great deal of energy and vitality. I saw a great deal of desire to want to reach out to know us as we were reaching out to know them.
They carry something in them already, and learning beneath that what it is that they carry is a set of values, a set of morals, of behavior that are about life, that are very lively, but that are also at the same time courteous and thoughtful and generous and humorous.
It seems very obvious that the way these children are being taught, that they're going to have a much better opportunity and a much stronger desire to live and be with all of the children in such a shrinking world where everybody is going to be living closer together. And this is going to help enormously in establishing peace among all people.
The group was trying to find out what made these schools different from other schools, and these children with a light in their eyes different from other children. Most of them had spent years in education, but they had never encountered such a fine profile before. The difference stemmed from the concept of education in these schools, and of course, within this concept, teachers who educate their students with a spirit of dedication, and who try to live out and model the truth to their students rather than just talk about it.
And what we began to realize is their teachers model to them how to be. So while they're having things put in their heads, math and science and languages, they're also having values put into their souls. And those values promote these superhuman beings, in the sense of human beings that are going to go out and live in countries around the world. They'll be educated in schools around, colleges and universities around the world. They'll become professors and teachers and doctors and lawyers and medicine people and corporate people around the world with those values. That, I believe, will change the world. The Gülen schools can change the world. I wish we could plant a few here in America.
I was really blown away by that, and I kept thinking about our public schools here, and again, it's not a valid comparison, but the teachers here have no sense of that whatsoever. How different our society would be if we had more of what some of the models of the Gülen schools were offering. And it's no small feat. I mean, there are sacrifices that go with this. And then you get back to, what are your values and what are your priorities? And to see the school, the students working in the evenings and not watching television, studying in groups, having adult tutors there to assist them. I couldn't quite believe it.
We're people who are excited about learning, who are excited about their lives, excited about their country. It must be that they are people who are listened to, that there are people who listen to them, who pay attention to them, who let them ask questions, who let them, explore ideas and things. They're not afraid of other people. They're not sullen and angry. They're not herded around, like the way that people are here in the public schools. I just know that the schools that we saw were amazing. They were brilliant. They were great.
And I think it's one of the signs that I see that gives me hope for the world. There are a lot of signs that we can look at in the world today and see, we could probably conclude there doesn't seem to be much or little hope. But when I see that kind of commitment on the part of deeply religious people who are devoted to Allah, who are devoted to education, who are devoted to the students, who are devoted to the country, and who want life to be better, not only for themselves but for the whole world, it's just something that I find to be, as I indicated, a sign of hope, not only for the people of Turkey, not only for the Islamic communities around the world, but for all of us.
The evenings are marked by pleasant dinners as the days were spent traveling around according to the heavy schedule. There were many people all over Turkey who opened their doors and hearts to these guests and welcomed them with smiling faces and hosted them with respect. It was the last evening of the American group in Turkey. An unforgettable surprise was expecting Mr. and Mrs. Boyd's arrival that night in the house they were visiting.
We're ready to leave for the evening, and we're standing out in the hallway, and we were all saying our goodbyes, all of this through a translator. And I asked the translator to say to the daughter, there were two precious children, an 8-year-old daughter and a 5-year-old, and I asked if he would tell the daughters that Tom and I are going to be grandparents in a couple of weeks, and we're expecting our first granddaughter. We have 3 grandsons, and we're ready for a granddaughter, and we're real excited about that. And this child, her face just beamed, and she ran back in the house through the front door, and she brought a doll back. And I had seen the doll in the evening, and her mother had told me that that was one of her favorite toys, and she pulled the doll out off the cabinet and brought it out and handed it to me. And through the translator, actually I have the doll here in this house, I should go get it. Through the translator said, "This is for the new baby." And tears just started running down my face because I realized that this child was she had already learned the Gülen principles. She took her favorite toy and gave it to an unborn child that she will never meet, that she doesn't know, to me, a stranger that had only spent a few hours in her home. She'll never see me again. And it was so generous, and she was so excited to give it away.
Mrs. Boyd did not want to accept the present of the little girl because it was so precious to her. But upon the warning of the translator that it would be inappropriate to reject, she had to accept it, with feelings of deep admiration.
So I accepted the doll, and then when I came back to America, I took the doll to my daughter when she had had her baby, and I said, this doll belongs to Lily, which is the name of our grandchild, and I said, but I'm going to keep it until she's 8 years old, because I want to tell her the story about the little girl in Turkey, who will be 16 at that point, who gave this doll to her. And I hope through my grandchild and this child in Turkey that this bridge, even though these two children will most likely never meet, that there'll be a bridge started between my grandchild, who's just now a few weeks old, and this child who's 8, that as my grandchild receives this doll and hears the story, that she'll understand that she has a spirit sister in another land far away who gave her a gift totally out of the generosity of her heart. And maybe that'll be the beginning of something. To me, that story is the symbol of the Gülen movement.
What brought them to Turkey was their friends thousands of miles away from this land. They had accepted the invitation of a university student or a friend who worked voluntarily for an NGO, or even someone he met in a shop. And they came to Anatolia. In their own expressions, they tasted many new things and had many spiritual experiences that they never encountered before. No one tried to impose any ideas on them. Nothing was dictated. Moreover, many things were even left unexplained. They were only shown a picture. A unique picture decorated finely with love, tolerance, and sincerity for years.
One of the things that very much impressed me in our journey to Turkey was that of how committed the Turkish Muslims were that were part of our group to their daily times of prayer. And I was on the one hand surprised by that, because we had a very rigid schedule that we were on, and we were always on the go. And yet the Turkish Muslims and all the Muslims that were part of our group took time to be faithful to their...
And that helped some, but really what affected me was his presence. We could not exchange much because we did not share each other's language, and yet this man had a presence. And then he showed up on our bus like a day later, and I just immediately went to him and couldn't talk, and he couldn't talk to me, but we just stood there. I remember standing there beside him, and both of us feeling this sense of grace. Whoever he was, I don't even know his name.
I think through their beautiful example and their beautiful practice of faith, they make others aware of the truth. I can say that when I first saw prayer being held in the mosque, it opened my eyes in a way that I had never expected. And I realized the reverence, and I realized the beauty of that prayer, and thought, yeah, I had a lot of work to do with my own prayer. I noticed the spirituality is not separate and apart from the daily life. It's interwoven into everything that they do. And therefore, there is a reverence, there are beautiful manners, and there is a focus that everything in life has a meaning and a purpose, and we shouldn't waste any time. I've learned from them that everything comes from God. Everything is a blessing, good or bad, and that the importance of spirituality in everyday life is monumental. And through their example, this has become very obvious to me.
There's one other word I've been taught that I use now often, and it's the word inshallah. Am I saying it correctly? And Rumi said this about that. He said, some people work and become wealthy. Others do the same and remain poor. Marriage fills one with energy and drains another. So don't trust ways because they change. A means, something in the middle, flails about like a donkey's tail. Always use the gratitude phrase, if God wills.
People reach inside themselves. Fethullah Gülen has shown that when one person deals in it with a warmth and caring towards another for their best interest, that makes that person also want to participate. And so the numbers of people that are joining this movement, I would imagine, could only keep increasing, because we all feel the need to be cared about. We all want to grow, and his words are inspiring people to be their best. And we saw people, making major sacrifices for a greater good way on down the road sometimes.
So that's why it's important for people like Fethullah Gülen, for example, that come out in the forefront and speak on behalf of Islam and Muslims and show the positive, the beauty, and the spirituality of Islam, so that the negative images that people see on TV can be offset by the wonderful work that people are doing throughout the world, Muslims are doing, including such as Fethullah Gülen.
I know everything there is to know about the expression of Islam that we experienced from our gracious hosts in Turkey. It's my hope and prayer that this is just a beginning. That it's just the beginning of of an ongoing deepening of understanding and relationship and commitment.
What they experienced, witnessed, and felt took them to a certain address. They asked questions about him and wanted to learn more about him during and after the trip. They might not have been given much information, but these people, each of whom had a background of rich experiences, were aware that they had found a new source that shed light upon the era.
Why were they different, and what was compelling them to be the way that they were? And I realized that probably it was their leader, Fethullah Gülen. Here is a man whose name you don't see anywhere, not in public so often. You don't see his pictures.
And I couldn't get many people to tell me much about it until we got home and I went on the web and I bought books and I started looking and then realized this man is amazing, and he has done something with his life that is very powerful. And I frankly have come to believe that this man has the capacity to change the world, much in the way Gandhi did. He has that kind of value system, he has that kind of presence, and I really believe that his movement, I really believe this, that his movement can change us and change the world.
Good fruit comes from a good tree. And in this case, the good tree has had its roots in the philosophy and the reflection of Fethullah Gülen.
I've read a number of Fethullah Gülen's works, and I'm always impressed with the wealth of his Islamic knowledge, his Islamic education. I think that he translates in a way the very best of the Hadith and the Quran and, for example, Rumi's teachings. He has a way of formulating all of that, synthesizing all of those elements in a way that that anyone can read easily and can benefit from. I think that in doing so, he does do a great service to humanity, in that he provides us with examples, easy to understand examples of how we should treat fellow human beings.
I have read several books by Gülen since becoming acquainted with the Turkish community. Sometimes have been absolutely transported by the language that I'm reading in English, so it's translations of his words, but transported by the ideas, because they are the ideas that I value, the sense of the relatedness of humanity, that we are all the same people. We are all, and if we are not helping each other, then what are we doing? Why are we here? If we are intolerant of the things that are in each of our heads, if I'm intolerant of what someone else has in his head, or he's intolerant of what I have in my head, then what is the point? So those ideas I have wrestled with my whole life, and to see what can come out of one person writing and thinking about these ideas, and starting schools, it does give hope. It gives me hope. It is the hope of the world. That I don't think the hope of the world comes from the governments of the world.
It's a path that's non-sectarian. It's not political. It's an altruistic path, devoid of any connection to politics or to asking anything in return. It's positive action that is action directed towards others, but not expecting any kind of reward, simply for the good of doing it, for the good of the community, for the connection between each other, brothers and sisters. It works at building bridges rather than separating and arguing.
Gülen's movement is perfect to help explain to Americans generally, and students specifically, that Islam is not a terrorist religion and that Muslims are not terrorists. People fear what they do not understand. People fear what they do not know. Americans have tremendous ignorance of Islam and of Muslims.
I think in reading about Fethullah Gülen and reading his works, the things that came out toward me from those was his compassion, was his way of caring, the individual taking action, was that the individual has to take responsibility for his own person, spirituality, lifestyle, blessings given, and that universally, if each one of us does that, how much we can affect the people around us, the society around us, and the world around us. Fethullah Gülen, I think, offers us so much more than we are getting right now.
Gülen has been able to help people understand that their lives are not about them, that their lives are not about self-serving, but that we are here as human beings to glorify God and to serve God and to have a way to work together, everyone to work together that our lives have a purpose greater than just us.
Allah's love for us is so immense and so embracing. When we focus and recognize on God's power and that He's created an environment for us that's comfortable and attractive and beautiful, this is an inspiration for us. That Fethullah Gülen recognizes this and focuses on this is an inspiration for me.
And I didn't really know his name until about 4 years ago. And he has become very important in my life. And of course this is Fethullah Gülen. And this man has so many young people, young men, young women, older men, older women who love him to the extent that they want to emulate him in every way they possibly can. And many of them have had the honor and privilege of meeting with him. And this gentleman, who is not in good health, but very strong in heart and living his life only for one God, he's influencing all of us.
These people, who added another route to their extremely rapid lives in an ever-shrinking time, were happy to have responded positively to a dialogue call. And they never regretted traveling thousands of miles. Their own words were the most powerful expression of their satisfaction.
I was asked if I would want to go back to Turkey, and I have to tell you, I wasn't ready to leave when the flight left. I was ready to stay another month or two or years or more. I was so impressed with Turkey because this is a country that's doing a really amazing job of moving into a modern world with their values in hand, with living the values and not losing them. They're doing that better than we are here in this country, I think. And I think that that is the hope of the world.
I will be a better person because of the people that I have met here, and because of the opportunity to look other people in the face and look into their eyes and see the goodness in their hearts and the desire that everybody has for salam. We all want peace. And I think that as we work together, as brothers and sisters, we can achieve this. And I think that Turkey is going to play an immensely important role in that, first of all, for the European Union, and secondly, for other countries such as my own.
We experienced hospitality and generosity and friendship and incredible humanity, dedication to some really good goals and purposes for dealing with, I think, the world's troubles. And I'm still feeling, this is 2 months later now, and I'm still feeling very filled with that trip. And constantly in my work, when I deal with the offenders and even the staff, I reference coming from a place of that generosity and that spirit and the joy that I witnessed.
How could anybody see that sort of activity, that sort of goodness put into action and come away still with a hard heart? I just couldn't see it. I mean, I think now that we're back, now that we know about this, I do think we have a responsibility to tell people about it. And I take that responsibility seriously.
The seed was planted in me, and I want to water it with information and knowledge. Well, I want to plant seeds now in my students and anyone that I come in contact with to do the same thing and pass it on, so then they will pass it on. So again, it's maybe the book information as well as just the social aspects, how generous and kind people of Turkey are.
I am forever changed by this event. Going to Turkey, seeing the community there has changed me. Changed me in a way that I didn't expect. I saw a level of dedication to Islam. I saw a level of dedication to humanity. I saw a level of dedication to making society work comfortably for everybody. By teaching these kids with every bit of energy that they had, these teachers, I understand Gülen's vision helps people to get along and be happy. And this will move Turkey as a society forward. This will move the influences that happen as they send people to other countries. This will move those countries forward in ways, I suspect, the same that have changed me.
When he presented his message of tolerance and dialogue, many people did not even understand what he was talking about. Some thought it was a dream that would never come true. Others thought it was a fruitless effort. Neither seeds would sprout nor trees bloom in this soil, which had not been watered for centuries. Obstacles of hostility and ignorance seemed impossibly overcome. But the fruits of even this short trip of 10 days are so delightful, so beautiful.
If there was the wildest coincidence that Fethullah Gülen was able to hear these words, to try to change the world, to increase human understanding through interfaith dialogue and through the Interfaith Dialogue Institute that he'll create, that work will outlive him and will help make our world a better place. For that work, I bless him and thank him.
Gülen, first of all, would be thank you. I'm grateful for the fact that you have touched the lives of many people who are using their lives not just to say thanks to you, but who are giving their energy and their gifts and their commitment to deepening faith and understanding and learning and education for many, many other people.
Fethullah Gülen has reminded us of where God is in our everyday life. and I can't imagine a higher calling or a greater gift to us. And I hope that God will bless him in response to that gift with the multitude of blessings.
I pray for him.